In 1920, a Jamaican man stood in New York and declared himself the Provisional President of Africa. Not Jamaica, not Harlem, Africa. And before anyone laughs, because history does enjoy setting traps, this same man built a movement with chapters across the world, launched a shipping company, frightened colonial governments, influenced Malcolm X, inspired African independence leaders, helped shape Rastafari, and more than 100 years later, forced the United States government to revisit the conviction that helped destroy him. His name was Marcus Garvey, and if the thumbnail says they feared him, that is not an exaggeration. It is almost the polite version, because Garvey did something that empires find deeply annoying. He told ordinary black people, poor workers, migrants, veterans, domestic servants, banana laborers, dock workers, and people told all their lives they were nothing, that they were part of a global nation, and then he tried to organize them like one. So, the question is not simply, how did a man from St. Ann's Bay become famous? The real question is, what did Marcus Garvey understand so clearly that powerful people spent years trying to stop him? To answer that, we have to begin in colonial Jamaica, where the British Empire had a talent for calling people subjects while treating them like evidence. Garvey was born in 1887 in St. Ann's Bay, Jamaica, into a society still haunted by slavery and structured by color, class, and empire. The island is no longer enslaved, but it is not truly free either. Power sits in government houses, merchant offices, plantations, churches, and newspapers. Respectability has a color chart. Opportunity has a gatekeeper. Young Garvey grows up with a father who owns books, and that matters, because before Garvey builds a movement, he builds a mind. He learns printing. He learns a language. He learns that whoever controls the press often controls what people believe about themselves. Then Jamaica gives him the first hard lessons. He sees the working class struggle in Kingston. He joins labor activity. He experienced the 1907 earthquake. He sees how quickly poor black life can be disrupted, neglected, and forgotten. He watches the system protect itself with magnificent efficiency and the poor with something closer to occasional sympathy. And here is the first Garvey lesson. Poverty was not just a lack of money, it was a lack of organized power. So Garvey leaves Jamaica and travels through Central America. In Costa Rica and Panama, he sees West Indian workers building other people's wealth under brutal conditions. Different countries, same pattern, different flags, same ladder, and black people placed near the bottom with impressive international consistency. Then he goes to London. And London is important because it is not just a city. It is the control room of the empire. From there, men in polished shoes make decisions that shape millions of lives in places they have never bothered to understand. Garvey reads, listens, studies Pan-African ideas, observes anti-colonial politics, and begins to see something bigger. Jamaicans, African Americans, West Indians in Central America, Africans under colonial rule, they are not separate tragedies. They are connected to chapters. And once he sees that, the next step becomes inevitable. In 1914, Garvey returned to Jamaica and co-founded the Universal Negro Improvement Association, the UNIA, with Amy Ashwood Garvey. The aim is enormous. Unite people of African descent across the world, build pride, build businesses, build institutions, and restore Africa to the center of black imagination. This is not a small club. This is not a debating society where everyone speaks nicely and goes home. Garvey is trying to build a worldwide movement from an island colony. Naturally, the local elite is not thrilled. Many think he is too bold, too loud, too focused on the black poor, too willing to disturb the comfortable arrangement. History has a simple rule. When a man tells the bottom of society to stand up, the top suddenly develops concerns about order. So, Garvey goes where the numbers, the anger, and the opportunity are greater: the United States. In 1916, he arrived in America. Harlem becomes his stage, and the timing is explosive. Black Americans are moving north during the Great Migration. Black soldiers are returning from World War I after fighting for democracy abroad and meeting racism at home. Lynchings continue. Segregation remains. The old promises are wearing thin. Garvey enters this world and offers something different. Not patience, not quiet gratitude, not wait your turn. He offers pride, structure, uniforms, newspapers, parades, businesses, ships, flags, titles, and a vision so grand that critics call it madness, which is often what people call ambition before it works. By 1920, the UNIA had become one of the largest black mass movements the world has ever seen. It has branches across the Americas, the Caribbean, Africa, and Europe. Its newspaper, The Negro World, carries Garvey's message across borders, sometimes legally, sometimes secretly, and often nervously watched by colonial authorities. And now comes the part that makes Garvey different from many leaders of his time. He not only preaches dignity, he tries to finance it. Garvey believes political freedom without economic power is a beautiful speech standing on weak legs. So, he promotes black-owned businesses through the Negro Factories Corporation, restaurants, publishing, grocery stores, employment, ownership. Then he launches the most famous and most controversial symbol of his entire movement, the Black Star Line, a shipping company owned by black investors, designed to connect the diaspora with Africa and create trade outside white-controlled systems. And yes, it sounds almost impossible. But imagine what it means in 1919 for ordinary black people, many with very little money, to buy shares in a company that says, "We will not simply ride on other people's ships, we will own our own." When the ships arrive in places like Havana and Kingston, crowds gather not just to see a vessel, but to see proof. Proof that black ambition could become steel, smoke, movement, and a flag at sea. But here is the plot twist. The Black Star Line is both Garvey's greatest symbol and his greatest vulnerability. The company struggled badly. Some ships are old, management is weak, maritime experience is limited, repairs drain money, investors grow frustrated, enemies circle. And if you are waiting for history to provide a clean hero and clean villains, history will now disappoint you, as it usually does. Garvey makes mistakes, but his enemies also understand that the Black Star Line is more than business. It is a psychological weapon. If it succeeds, it tells millions of black people they do not need permission to build global institutions. That is dangerous. So, the state begins watching. J. Edgar Hoover and the Bureau of Investigation target Garvey. An undercover agent, James Wormley Jones, known as Agent 800, infiltrates the UNIA and gains access to internal operations. The government looked for a way to bring Garvey down, and eventually, mail fraud charges tied to Black Star Line stock promotion became the legal weapon. But Garvey's troubles are not only coming from the government. Some established black leaders deeply oppose him. W.E.B. Du Bois and others see Garvey as reckless, authoritarian, dangerous, and damaging to the civil rights cause. Garvey fires back with his own attacks. The disagreement becomes bitter, personal, and historic. Then Garvey makes one of the most damaging decisions of his career. he meets with a Ku Klux Klan leader in 1922, arguing from a separatist logic that both groups supported racial separation. It is a political disaster. For many black observers, it feels like betrayal. His enemies do not need to invent the scandal. Garvey has handed it to them neatly wrapped, and yet even this moment reveals the complexity of the man. Garvey is not simple. He is visionary and flawed, disciplined and theatrical, brilliant and stubborn, liberating and sometimes deeply wrong. That is why the story matters. Sanitized heroes teach very little. Complicated ones force us to think. In 1923, Garvey was convicted of mail fraud. In 1925, he entered a federal prison in Atlanta. From prison, he continues to write and speak to his followers. The movement bends, but does not disappear. In 1927, President Calvin Coolidge commuted his sentence, but Garvey was deported. He returns to Jamaica to massive crowds, tries politics, forms the People's Political Party, and continues pushing ideas about workers, rights, and self-government. But the center of his movement has shifted. The pressure, the conviction, the financial collapse, the internal conflicts, all have taken their toll. By 1935, Garvey relocated to London, and there, the man who once commanded global crowds lives his final years in relative isolation. Then comes one of the cruelest endings in Caribbean history. In 1940, a newspaper reportedly published a premature obituary describing him as broke, alone, and unpopular. Garvey, already ill after a stroke, sees the world writing his failure before he is even dead. He died that same year at 52. For a moment, it looks as if the empire, the courts, the critics, and time itself have won. But history, being history, has one more trick up its sleeve. Garvey's organizations weaken, but his ideas travel. Rastafari absorbs his Pan-African imagination. Ghana's Kwame Nkrumah draws inspiration from his message. The Black Star becomes a symbol of African liberation. Malcolm X grew up in a family shaped by Garveyism. Black Power echoes his language of pride and self-reliance. Civil rights leaders recognize the scale of what he awakened. If you are watching from London, New York, Toronto, Miami, or anywhere in the Jamaican diaspora, Garvey's story is not distant history. It is part of the reason a person from a small Caribbean island can speak about Africa, America, Europe, and the Caribbean as one connected story. That was Garvey's great achievement. He made scattered people see themselves as connected. And in 2025, more than a century after his conviction, President Joe Biden grants Marcus Garvey a posthumous pardon. The pardon does not erase every controversy. It does not turn Garvey into a saint. It does not repair every life damaged by surveillance or political prosecution. But it does something important. It admits that the legal destruction of Garvey cannot be separated from the political fear of Garvey. And that brings us to now. Because the deepest Garvey question is not whether every idea he had was perfect. They were not. The question is whether we have learned the main lesson he risked everything to teach. Dignity must be organized. Pride must be built into institutions. Freedom must have banks, ships, schools, newspapers, businesses, memory, and courage. People cannot survive on applause alone. Marcus Garvey did not simply tell black people to dream bigger. He showed the world why that dream frightened so many powerful men. And maybe that is why, long after the ship stopped sailing, long after the prison doors closed, long after the headlines tried to bury him, the idea still moves. A Jamaican from St. Anne's Bay told a scattered people they were a global force. The world laughed, then it watched, then it tried to stop him. And more than 100 years later, we are still talking about why. So here is the question to carry with you. If Garvey could build a global movement with newspapers, ships, speeches, and sheer willpower in the 1920s, what are we supposed to build now? Share your thoughts in the comments and please subscribe to this channel, Impacting Jamaica.